The hosts of Two Bored Apes are not registered investment advisors. The podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only. Nothing said on it should be construed as investment advice.
Two Bored Apes talking NFTs, DeFi, and some random stuff. Two Bored Apes talking NFTs, DeFi, and some random stuff.
Welcome to episode 36 of Two Bored Apes. I'm your host, Jamie. I'm here with my friend and co-host, Roy. Roy, how are you?
I'm good, Jamie. Jamie is adjusting his camera already.
The kind of thing you would think you'd do before the recording
Just
started.
before we start, yeah. I'm good. I had a nice big meal just before we recorded, as usual. I
actually did not, which is a little bit... I've had a full nap since my last meal, so I'm good to go.
Riveting. All right.
Oh, you don't want to talk about what we ate for our last meals? That's kind of a tradition at this point.
All right. I cooked steak with a nice mushroom sauce.
What kind of steak are we talking about here?
Ribeye.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
I love a good ribeye. And how did you prepare this? Cast iron pan or a grill or what happened here?
Stainless steel pan, reverse seared. So low, medium heat.
I know about reverse sear.
Rest it, and then high heat, and add the butter and sear it, and it's delicious. And then I made mushroom
do we have
sauce.
any aromatics in the butter when we were basting? No, nothing. No. I don't
mess with that fancy stuff. Just salt,
love rosemary,
and steak
with my steak. Black pepper, right?
After I don't love the burnt pepper taste.
It burns. Yeah, it burns. That's what people say. Okay. This is a Twitter Q&A episode. We're done talking about food for the time being.
There were a couple of food questions or comments, but I don't think we included them.
Let's jump right in.
All right.
Our first question comes from...
Wait.
Okay, let's not jump right in.
We got to do the song. The Twitter
Q&A. Okay, let's jump right in. Mike McNFT says, for Zeneca, it's been a few months since the punk buy. Have you learned anything from being a punk holder? For both of you, I think the NFT space has been great at making existing friendships stronger. Have you guys had a similar experience / is having the pod a net positive for your friendship? So why don't you start with the punk one?
All right. Learn anything from being a punk holder? No. I feel very...
Have you wandered into the punk Discord at all? It's kind of a famous Discord.
Yes, but it's an open Discord. Anyone could read it anyway. Mm-hmm. And then I think 6 months ago, they made it so you couldn't talk unless you had a punk or maybe a me bit. And I never spent a lot of time there. Maybe a year ago, it was that's where a lot of alpha was initially shared.
Right.
But the last few months, basically I popped in there when I bought my punk and it was fun. I was just hanging out. And then again, when Yuga Labs bought the IP just to check in and see. But again, that anyone can do that. You didn't have to be a punk holder.
Yeah.
I haven't learned anything. I'm remembering, I don't know if you remember, I did a Twitter Spaces a couple of months ago, and this one person came up and they there was a queue of people waiting to talk, and they just interrupted and being like, I'm a punk holder. I'm a punk holder.
I wasn't in the space, but I was on Twitter and saw the reactions and then the clip got clipped or whatever. Yeah,
that exact same punk was requesting to speak in a Twitter space 12 hours ago that I was hosting, and I just did not bring them up because...
Decline.
Yeah. Anyway, I've not learned anything. The floor price has not changed much from when I bought it. It's just gone up a bit, down a bit, up a bit. I have a lot of thoughts on the IP stuff with the Yuga Labs acquisition and CCO and all that, but that's sort of outside the scope of this.
CC0, Roy.
CC0, yeah. Thank you, Jamie.
You're welcome. So getting into that aggression. Stronger. Yeah, I was going to say. It's great at making existing friendships stronger. Have you guys had a similar experience, and is having the pod a net positive for your friendship? What do you think about these questions, Roy?
I'd say I agree that it is great at making existing friendships stronger. Mm-hmm. And I would say that the pod has been a net positive. I mentioned to you, I think a week ago, just shortly after Apecoin dropped, how we were just chatting excitedly back and forth. And I said, like, it's just great that we both have apes. Like, it would be way less fun to just, one of us is just bragging to the other one. Like, it doesn't work that way. And
right.
Yeah, it's fun to have someone.
It is nice though that there's so many projects to where theoretically, if one of us didn't, there's just been so many opportunities to hit absolute home runs in the NFT space that it's not like the only way to have succeeded was to have apes. But the degree to which they have exceeded everybody's expectations and delivered and all that is pretty great for the both of us to have been able to have one. I'll say the NFT friendship thing, I agree. And I definitely had some friendships of people that I was very close with in Vegas that just naturally I drifted away from to some degree after I moved back here that are also very into NFTs. And it's been good to be able to have a thing to sort of come together on again and kind of reinvigorate those.
Yeah, I've had a couple of friends like that as well, just from back home in Australia that, we would hang out a lot and then, moved apart. And then with NFTs, it's like I'm into it, they started getting into it, and all of a sudden it's just such a fun and exciting thing that you can just talk about. Yeah. Once you're into NFTs, you can talk to people about NFTs all day long.
Once you pop, you can't stop.
Yeah. And in terms of has the podcast been a net positive? I would say so. I think it's been fun. Yeah.
It hasn't been. I mean, my wife is quick to talk about how unhealthily much we talk to each other just on a chat app. Like regularly, we'll be talking every day for sure to some degree. But to do it vocally and in one continuous stretch with like a through point of NFTs and stuff has been sort of interesting rather than having the other thing, which we still maintain.
Yeah.
But if it was more is not the right word, less different. If it was a different friend that I was doing the podcast with, who I had a less active daily communication with, it might be even more of a boon to the friendship. Whereas we were already thick as thieves before we started this.
All right. Cosmic Duality says or asks, in what industry do you think NFTs will create the most impact on besides gaming?
Art.
Yes, I was going to say art as well.
Seems like an obvious one.
Maybe let's look outside of art and gaming because they're the existing ones that have.
they did not mention art, so it seems worth talking about it for more than 1 second, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it solves the provenance problem like totally, right? Which is huge and very relevant in art. And it also gives a way for digital art to actually be valued as if it's real art rather than just a commodity to be used by a corporation for some sort of bigger media, whatever. You know what I mean? Like if you were a digital artist before, the ways to make money from your art was just to make whatever digital art you were told by Disney for their next movie or a video game company or whatever. So I would say those two right off the bat are great ones. Obviously, there's the whole generative art thing, which naturally seems to go so well with NFTs as well.
Yeah. I think it really is just allowing an entire new art form to boom in terms of digital art. It was just really not feasible for individual digital artists to sell their creations to individual buyers or collectors. Easily. And it's amazing how
it still feels to me that people that haven't bought into the concept, digital art is literally a valueless thing to them. No matter how much they like the image, there's no way that you can assign value to it because you can right click save it or whatever. Whereas some other traditional art that they like equally as much aesthetically and artistically is something that they can clearly put value on. And so it's just kind of a mental hurdle to acknowledge that this is a sort of valid way of conferring ownership to something. And then once you do it, all of a sudden the sky's sort of the limit because this stuff that we've sort of been artificially not valuing for all this time, all of a sudden you go, oh, it's like, it's the same as this other stuff. Only maybe more relevant and modern because, art tends to move forward. And certainly digital art is a newer thing than painting and sculpture or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's basically an art revolution. It's like we're moving into the digital age.
Right, let's talk about something besides art. I mean, come on, art and gaming is such an obvious. Here's one other thing I'll say is that a lot of people have talked about music as a potential thing, and there's definitely been some stuff in the space, but it doesn't seem like by and large it's had even close to as much of an impact on musicians as it has visual artists. So it'll be interesting to see if that, if music can kind of catch up and innovate in a way with it. I don't really know if they'll be able to do it. Probably to some degree. Human ingenuity is quite powerful, but I guess that's just also a subset of art. Depends on how you define art,
but it is interesting though that it hasn't yet taken off that much. I think some of it might have to do with the fact that like digital music was already being sold in like a huge way.
Right.
You could go to iTunes and pay money to download a song. You could subscribe to a streaming service. There wasn't really, as far as I'm aware, like too many avenues for that, for like digital art, animated art. Like you could buy prints of a physical print of something that someone created. You could hire someone to create an animation, but
this
in
is
terms
true.
of just collecting the art, that didn't really exist. So it's just, it really went almost from 0 to 1, whereas music is like shifting from one to another.
Yeah, but it's sort of interesting that like, you can sort of right click download the MP3 file just as easily as you can right click save the the JPEG or the PNG. So why was it so easy for us to value and commodify music digitally, whereas we weren't able to do it with art? That's sort of an interesting thing. I guess it probably has something to do with the way that corporations were able to sort of bundle the music and all of that, because it's not like the internet was a way for individual musicians to make money going straight to the consumer. It's all been going through iTunes for a while, and then more recently through Spotify and stuff like that. And obviously the thing with NFTs is sort of that they allow theoretically a disintermediation. So you can just have the customer here and this has like insurance information. I need to stop with you for the customer here and the artist here. And you don't need a giant Web2 corporation in between just taking 15% for no real reason. They're still mostly under the yoke of the recording companies, who I believe are also taking a bunch of money that they don't really deserve at this point. So that's actually another reason why theoretically NFTs might be able to help out in making the relationship between customer and artist more direct and fair and equitable.
Yeah, and there's some cool projects in the works. People are definitely trying to like sink their teeth into how to NFT-fy music.
I've seen some people that like just are selling their music videos as an NFT, just as a way for people to, in the way that you would just kind of spend money on a collector's item or whatever to show your fanship and to support an artist who you really like. They're just sort of doing that with NFTs now, which is good and interesting, but it seems like it's just like a sort of a Band-Aid solution to really transforming it, because it's so optional and it kind of puts so much of the responsibility of supporting the artist on like a couple of the really rich fans, rather than a way for it to be like somehow we're all paying 10 cents in crypto every we stream or something.
We really need like the Web3 version of Spotify and Netflix, just where it's for the end consumer, it's just as good of an experience, but instead of one individual entity like Netflix or Spotify taking the lion's share of the revenue, with the recording studios taking the chunk and like the artist getting a tiny percentage, it's just the split is better and we just need that.
The idea behind Spotify sort of is they were trying to do that and just have themselves basically be between the artist and the end consumer, and just make it much more efficient, basically, and squeeze out the recording studios. And it's been going very slowly. They haven't really been able to reduce the cut that the recording studios have had, but it'll be interesting to see if within crypto and NFTs, people can just leapfrog both of them. But like once you're already under the contract of the recording studios, it's not really a possibility as far as I understand.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of have people that are forward-thinking artists that take a leap of faith and stuff like that. And you know, just to keep going on this, with Spotify, there are ways with them where you can just kind of publish your music without having the recording studios initially. But it's just you have to be sort of a hustler in terms of your ability to market yourself. But you know, once you get included in like one of their big playlists, like the custom Spotify playlists and stuff like that, it really can transcend the career trajectory of a musician. All
right, we touched on art and music. Technically, the question was which industry do you think NFT will create the most impact on?
Yeah. Here's another one that I have thought of is title insurance. I don't know if that's something that you're familiar with in Australia or Germany, but basically if you try to buy a house in America, you have to pay for title insurance to basically make sure that the person that's trying to sell you the house actually owns the house and doesn't have liens on the house and all that stuff. And it's not really a thing that people should have to do, as far as I understand it, because it's all basically like public record stuff. And these insurance companies are basically just good at searching through those records to confirm that it's fine. And a couple states have actually, I think, even gotten rid of it through laws and stuff. But it's a big industry and sort of a mandatory thing that everybody has to go through. But if you could put like the deeds or titles to houses on chain. Why are you smirking?
I'm just thinking back to the tax stuff I was talking about last week, and then I internally I wanted to yawn as you're talking about title insurance.
Well, that's true.
But no, actually, it is interesting, but it's just funny that's
so
where
just
my head was at.
The way to actually, because again, NFTs are just a empty vessel for showing ownership in a decentralized way. And so there's a lot of things, and this particular one, houses, is one where people are regularly, every time they go through, having to pay this other service to prove that the owner really owns it and doesn't have any outstanding liens against it. So that seems like a solution that you could easily do if we were storing the ownership on chain.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people have said, like real estate and NFTs, and then cars and NFTs, and like any real big asset that you're trying to sell, it's a similar thing, right? Where you can just provably pass the ownership of that asset.
It's not really different from the art provenance situation, ultimately, except you're not like confirming that Toyota really built this car. You're confirming that, Fred really owns it or whatever and didn't steal it.
Yeah. Look at this kombucha I'm drinking.
Lemon, no thank you. Nope.
Well, look at the top
that's
part.
a no for me. Oh, Roy, that's cool.
Yeah, that's the brand. The flavor of
that's
the kombucha.
Not a flavor I would ever pick.
It's it's fine, but the entire we have 4 different flavors. We got lemon, we got ginger, we got berry.
Ginger, big fan of ginger.
And then we got some other one, purple something. Anyway,
I grew ginger in my garden once, and the ants just ate the shit out of it. Just that's an aside for our gardening listeners.
I went outside. It was a beautiful day here in Munich, and I went to a balcony and I looked at my pot plants from last year, or like just the pots with
your
dirt
potted
in it.
plants. Let's be clear here, right?
Sure. Well, we say
pot plants. It could sound like you're growing marijuana. Is all I'm saying.
Okay, I can see how that might sound like that, but
if in America you said I looked at my pot plants, 100%, that's what you would think.
Yeah, in Australia, I'm pretty sure we just say pot plants for like any potted plant.
We say potted.
Right. Anyway,
This
I
is
looked at
good stuff. This is a really good podcast, by the way. Straight from kombucha flavors to, do you say pot plant or potted plant? This is just, I mean,
hey,
I don't
leading into
understand
the
how we
random stuff.
don't win awards.
Anyway. I was longingly looking at it and being like, hey, I miss gardening. The end. Next question.
When you stopped me from complaining about how boring the podcast was, I thought you were going to have something that was not boring and going, and it made me want to do it at the end. I just started my seeds, actually. They're in this closet over here. I got some cucumbers and eggplant and stuff like that. All right, let's go on to question 3.
Let's.
Hot Dog Lamb says, at what point would you consider Yuga Labs too big? Could you see them becoming the Web3 version of a monopoly?
I don't think they'll become a monopoly. I think they'll be like a giant, which they already are, and have like a lot of market share, but not a monopoly. What do you think?
I think that's accurate. I think the way that it all works and the rights that the individual owners have and the way the DAO is structured and being run in the first, it's 4 days old or whatever. More than that, but you get the idea. It is such that it's less of a concern probably than it was in previous versions of the web, I guess would be a way of saying it. So I think that it's not a particularly legitimate concern, but it's in terms of sort of stifling creativity and stuff like that. I could see how people would be worried about it, but ultimately people can just kind of do whatever they want. And if people like it, they can support it. And Yuga Labs, they bought Larva Labs, right? There's sort of this fear or assumption that they're just going to keep snapping up other projects, which we don't really have any indication is going to be the case. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, but I would just say you should go to read Stratechery and all of his stuff where he talks about what he calls aggregation theory, because that really helped me understand the way these big Web2 tech companies were able to get these sort of monopolistic positions. And that'll help you to see what are the similarities and differences between what can happen in Web3 versus what has happened in Web2 are.
Stratechery, is that a blog? It's a
blog by a guy named Ben Thompson. It's really, really good. I've been reading it for years now, and I'm 2 articles behind and feeling guilty about it. I need to read them soon.
At what point would you consider Yuga Labs too big? I mean, that's kind of tricky to say. I would say that I don't think that they're too big now.
No.
I don't know at what point.
You were talking the other day about like looking at the trending collections or whatever, and they had 4 of the top 10 or something.
They literally had the top 5.
Right. So that definitely, if you're sort of measuring NFT success by daily sales volume, that would definitely be something where, if I was cynical and worried about the diversity of inputs or whatever in the space, that would be definitely concerning. Now, again, I want to reiterate that these projects are very largely, and I believe going to be increasingly largely, decentralized in the way they're run and supported and rewarded and just all of the things. So even though that's what it sort of says, it's not as if one guy named Yuga can just kind of change everything for all of those projects. That's just not the way this whole space is structured. But it would be nice to, and I think that was also like based on the news, like something like Azuki, I'm sure is in the top 5 right this second.
Yes.
So it's not actually all them. And I think that if the space is like worth its salt and as interesting as we believe it is, and as good to creatives and community and all of that stuff as we think it is, there's just going to continue to be awesome new projects that they do not control. And, you know, if they build this cool thing called the other side, that's sort of a decentralized metaverse, so to speak, those will be able to prosper within it, and it'll just be a you scratch my back, I scratch your situation where everybody's getting lifted up together because we're building decentralized rails for all of this stuff. And Yuga will be a big part of that, it seems like, for sure at this point. But I still believe that they believe in the decentralization. I think my voice just cracked. I'm going through puberty, maybe. So I think that they're going to be good for the space, regardless of the fact that at this point they're a huge entity and will continue to be. And if somehow the space, you know, continues to grow at the speed that it has, and they keep swallowing up more and more of it, I think we can definitely be concerned that it's just all under one thing. But again, that one thing is sort of something that we all control, or can, with the purchase of a single Apecoin, for instance. Rather than, again, it's just whatever Mark Zuckerberg says goes for Facebook, which is different. And again, that's a situation where the equivalent would be, you know, the shareholders get to vote, right? And there's some level of decentralization there, but there isn't, because they have a dual class share structure where he gets, you know, 10,000 voting rights for each Class B share that only he has. So literally just whatever he wants to do is what happens. And that's just not the case with Yuga.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think if we see like Azuki, World of Women, Doodles, you know, all falling under the banner of Yuga, then yeah, maybe is just too much Yuga stuff. But
right,
I don't really think that that's going to happen.
Yeah, it also depends, like, you know, how hands-off are they going to be when they acquire this stuff? If it just is under the same umbrella, but they're not kind of forcing the narratives together and all of that stuff, it's still a lot less concerning than, you know, sort of the equivalent behavior in sort of Web 2 would be. Because, you know, if, for instance, like when Twitter bought Vine, when they decide Vine is no good, they just squash it. And now Vine no longer exists. But Yuga Labs cannot destroy your Azuki NFTs, even if they buy the company behind it and the IP to it, and all of that stuff. You know, we own this stuff individually. And that's just very, very different from what things were before.
Yeah. All right. Rice Farmer, next question, says, what are your thoughts on the staking Apecoin proposal?
Now, Roy, you said you wanted to handle this one.
You're real funny. Just before we started recording, I was like, Jamie, I want to take a quick look at this proposal. And he said, it's been all over Twitter all day. It's all everyone's talking about. And you're on top of it, right? What's going on?
I'm fairly on top of it. I wouldn't say I'm totally on top of it. So basically,
you said that you are probably the greatest expert.
No, I didn't. No, Roy's being funny. Roy's being funny, everyone. So this is regarding the staking proposal, which is number 4. I think 5 is also related, but not as relevant. And so basically, the first issue is that the wording was not totally clear. So when people read it, there was a lot of different interpretations for what it was. So that's sort of strike one against it. The other concern was that it seemed, some of the interpretations, again, because it's not super clear how it's written, that you're not staking the NFT. The NFT is basically allowing you access to the staking pool, and the only thing you're actually staking is the Apecoin. And that seems to actually be what they're trying to do, which is, you know, could be good or bad, whatever. But it can definitely tend to lead to more centralization, and basically the big Apecoin whales like, you know, Animoca Brands and stuff like that, can get a disproportionate amount of the rewards compared to the individual NFT owners, which is what the individual NFT owners don't want to happen. It seems to me like there's, from the complaining, a bit of it's not hypocrisy, but just people kind of being a little bit delusional, maybe. Like, it's the Apecoin DAO. Apecoin is the governance token, and now people are wanting the Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT to be the supreme thing there, and to have the Apecoin rewards disproportionately flow to that and flow from that. But it's not the Bored Ape Yacht Club DAO, and the Bored Ape Yacht Club NFTs are not the governance tokens. And to just kind of go further on that, it seems like some of these people want to get the Apecoin airdrop, which they did, sell it, and again, this is the governance token. They want to sell the governance token, but then still have some say in the governance. It's like, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
So those would be sort of my first responses to it. And then just to get into the specific of sort of what it actually is, the plan is for there to be multiple staking pools. There will be a Bored Ape Yacht Club staking pool, a Mutant Ape Yacht Club staking pool, a Bored Ape Yacht Club plus Bored Ape Kennel Club staking pool, and then lastly, the fourth pool would be a just Apecoin pool. And so the first three, those NFTs are basically, again, the keys that allow you access to participate in that. And the idea is that there will be sort of a different amount of rewards for each one, and people that have sort of a diverse portfolio of these assets can kind of move in and out based on where the rewards are juiciest and stuff. But what's sort of being talked about a lot now is having basically a cap on the amount of Apecoin that can be staked in one of the first three pools per NFT, allowing you access to it in order to, maintain a lot of the power and value within the NFT itself, rather than to sort of relinquish so much of it to the pure ERC20 token.
This is fascinating. This is so cool just to watch, like, DAO governance unfold on such an enormous public scale. Like, the DAOs have existed, and DAOs have all sorts of issues in terms of governance, and like different parties having different incentives. And now we're clearly seeing this delineation between the NFT holders and the Apecoin holders, who, yes, to begin with, were completely aligned because the only people who had Apecoin, well, actually, no, if you look at the Yuga and whatnot, but of the community, 62%. Yeah.
Sorry, just the people that did that most recent funding round, the $450 million, they said you have to own an ape or a mutant if you want to take part in this.
Yeah,
so there is
really
still
cool.
Some of that. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, and then what I was going to say is, like, it began as, yes, the incentives are aligned. Apecoin and NFT holders, they want the same thing. But now it's very much the case of, well, as you said, NFT holders, some of them have sold all of their Apecoin or some of it, and then they still want to say, hey, well, I've still got the NFT. I want more Apecoin now. I want it to reward me. And I think it's just so interesting. And I think I agree that that's not how it should work necessarily. Like, they are two very different entities or pools of people. I'm so interested to see just how this all plays out. It's an incredible experiment in governance and all sorts of stuff.
People are talking about it potentially just being the most active DAO of all because of how much talk and discussion there's been already just on this one proposal from the get-go. I have more I can say about it, and I can also talk about a funny other DAO story I heard the other day. When you're talking about how DAOs have all these issues, recently one that had like a $10 million treasury or whatever, the community voted to like dissolve it or distribute it or whatever, and the multi-sig signers are just holding it hot. They're just not doing it. Which is so funny / terrible. Yeah,
I'm gonna quickly share my screen, and I'm trying not to do too much of this because of the podcast listeners, but I want to just quickly show. So this is the proposal. We're looking at AIP4 staking. You can see the current results. There's 55% in favor for it and 45% roughly against it.
That was like 98.2 this morning, by the way. In
favor versus against?
Yeah.
Wow. But this part I found so interesting. If you go down to like the number, the specific votes by wallet, and you can see it's ordered largest to lowest. Almost every proposal I've ever seen for any of these DAOs or snapshots is like, it's very heavily skewed, and like the top 10 always tend to be the one way or the other, or maybe there's one or two. This one is like back and forth from like the largest holder in favor, second largest against, third largest in favor, fourth largest against. Just like
for the first 9, it goes favor against, favor against, favor against for the first 9, which is very impressive.
Yeah.
And I think maybe actually some of those in favor are just defaulted to in favor, and haven't actually dug into it. And so I think the ones that are against are for the most part going to stay against. And I would think that some maybe of the ones that are in favor won't stay that way.
Interesting.
I can also just kind of keep talking about it because like one of the founders made a post today about it after a lot of the discussion from the public that was interesting. And the Animoca CEO also spoke about it.
What were they saying? That's really curious.
So let me just add this one other thing. The other question is people are not sure if the tokens that have lockup periods, are they A, able to vote, and are they B, able to take part in the staking while they're still locked up? Those questions are not clear. I think maybe the first one is clear and I just don't know, but the other one is definitely not clear as to whether or not they can actually stake them while they're still locked up. So that's one thing. So then I don't know if it was Garga, one of the 4 founders, I believe it was Garga, made a post where he basically was saying, we hear you, this is interesting, compelling, but what I don't want is for the NFTs themselves to actually have to be locked up in staking contracts. That's not how I think of the way NFTs should be used and owned and like interacted with. That's not like the fun and interesting thing to him. So he kind of wanted to give sort of praise to the concept of, again, having the NFT just act as a key that allows access to it. And then the thing you actually stake being the coins. And then so theoretically the solution to stop it from being a ultimately centralizing, reinforcing thing from the Apecoin whales was to do that cap where, you know, each Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT will only allow you to stake, for instance, 15,000 Apecoin in any of these given pools. So some whale can't just stick in 1 million and get way more than you.
Yeah, you were right. It is Gaga who made this big mirror post on it. I haven't read it, but yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I'm referring to there. And then the Animoca brand CEO did a tweet thread shortly after this was released that basically also gave his impressions on what people were saying. And he was basically saying we're going to have sort of an amended proposal for if these two pass that deals with the concept of basically, I think specifically having that cap per NFT. And then I guess the idea is that, you know, again, there was these 4 pools. The Apecoin whales, the only way that they can really get sort of all that disproportionate is by fighting each other in the Apecoin only staking pool. All the ones that are gated behind the NFTs will have to be distributed sort of more evenly to the individual NFT holders, is sort of the idea.
So fascinating. So fascinating.
I can keep going, man. So one other thing I saw is that last I checked, there's like 35,000 wallets that are currently holding Apecoin. So when you're talking about these staking pools, there's only 30,000 NFTs that allow access to them. So there's already thousands of people holding Apecoin that don't even have access to 3 of the 4 of them. And again, that would also be assuming that, you know, every single one of these NFTs was in a separate wallet, which we of course know is not the case.
Yeah.
Okay, that's about all I have off the top of my mind on this stuff.
Yeah.
Which I think was a lot.
That was a lot. One of the things with Apecoin is you can delegate your votes or your voting power to another person. And I've like, at the back of my mind, I was like, it would be really cool to just like try and get a whole bunch of people delegating it to me and then just like have a significant amount of say in these things. Then I was like, I don't have time for that.
Yeah. I actually, when you started the sentence, I thought it was going to end with, so I'm looking for somebody to have as my person voting for me.
Right. That's basically where I am. I think I would like to find someone to have.
You know who I like is D Farmer. I feel like he's a good pillar of the Bored Ape Yacht Club community. Sometimes he can be a little abrasive for my taste, but I feel like he ultimately has a very good read on the community, and he's been like just wildly bullish on Bored Ape Yacht Club for so long, and in a way that for a long time I was like, this guy seems crazy, but like obviously time has proven that bullishness to be the correct stance. And he just has a good, from my perspective, he knows the different stakeholders, and he kind of understands what ought to be done versus what is easy to be done, and that sort of thing. One thing he was talking about, he made a good tweet thread today regarding this, was that ultimately, gosh, my mind goes crazy, but like, remember the 6529 thread where he's sort of talking about how we don't want to let the institutions steal our JPEGs, and how it was sort of easy for us to let them steal our Bitcoin and Ethereum because there's just, it's just a market, and they're all individual, and you can just buy them. If you won't sell it, somebody else will. He's kind of touching, D-Farmer was sort of touching on that same thing here with Apecoin, where ultimately it is going to be so easy for the institutions to get undue influence with their money with them. And so we need to, as much as possible early on, fight for the rights and value of the NFT holders within the space. So like, that's a good reason to right now not vote in favor of these proposals, and really make sure we have a solid bedrock for which to fight this sort of the inevitable tide of capital taking control of so many ape coins and the DAO by an extension.
All right, he gets my votes.
I don't know if he's even doing it, but if he did, he would be somebody who I'd feel pretty good delegating my votes to. You
get my votes too, Jamie.
Thank you. I don't know if it works like that though. I mean, you could probably do 50% with one and 50% with another. I don't really know. Yeah. If not, you could just make two different wallets and then do it yourself.
Anyway.
Okay, that's probably enough on that one, right?
Yeah.
Our next question comes from Jack SM. It said, do you guys collect any photography NFTs? And if so, who or what do you like?
I have collected a couple of photography NFTs, but I wouldn't say that I'm an avid collector of them. You recently bought a couple of really cool looking photography NFTs, if I'm not mistaken.
I bought one and am slightly looking for more. Specifically, I was looking for some astrophotography, which is something that I like, and I tweeted out trying to get a line on some, but unfortunately, I do not have the Twitter following that you do, so it didn't surface all that much. But that is a category of photography that I'd like to get more of. Right now, I only own photography NFTs from two different photographers, one being my sister, and another one being a guy named Martin Rack from the Czech Republic, I believe. And he has a great series called The Sound of Silence, and it's basically all winter photography. And, I grew up in New England where the winters were snowy, and it looked pretty similar to what he was doing there. And it was very sort of evocative and reminded me of that, and I loved it. And one in particular I thought was really spectacular and bought. So here's the collection. I can't remember which number I bought off the top of my head, but you can find it in my vault pretty easily.
But yeah,
it's right there, actually, right there, number 16. That one's mine. Kind of in the middle, right there.
There we go.
Boom. That's me. I love it.
Yeah, that's a great NFT. That's a great photo. That's a great piece of art.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I own some photography NFTs from your sister as well, which I like them. And I got some from the Wish You Were Here collection by Lindsay Burns.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah. I just think
I also just remembered I actually have a couple from Jim as well.
Oh, so do I.
Father-in-law, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I think photography NFTs,
we can link to the collections that we own from, or just the wallets, and people can search. I definitely would like more, though. I'm just, I've been talking about it lately, how I'm just getting more into collecting NFTs for pure art purposes. And photography is a big enough category in that I'm looking to. In terms of like the really huge stuff, there's basically right now Twin Flames and then Where My Vans Go. And the Twin Flames never particularly did much for me, but the Where My Vans Go stuff is very cool. And the behind the scenes videos, for it are crazy, but way out of my price range. But yeah, if any listeners have a read on some good astrophotography, I'd love to take a look at it.
You know who else is photography I like? Pixel Pete, who I believe is on the curation board at Artblocks.
I believe he is as well.
Prominent figure in the community. Yeah, he does photography, which is, it's sort of like these top-down views of intersections in like big cities and stuff like that. And you get this really cool snapshot view of, yeah, just a city, an intersection that, you know, it's not something I would ever have really seen before. And I think that's, for me, when it comes to photography, NFTs, I like seeing things that I wouldn't ordinarily see in day-to-day life, or something that I would see just photographed extraordinarily differently. But yeah, like this is just a new vantage point. I would never see astrophotography. That's something that I wouldn't necessarily see.
Right. I mean, you literally can't, because, you know, most of the time it's with a really long exposure to where if you looked at it, you need to collect 50 seconds continuously of light to make the image appear to the way that it does. The photo is different than what you'd see just looking at it because of the fact that, you know, you have that lens open for a long time. There was actually a collection that I remember like seeing that it was coming out in a few days, and the photos being teased were very cool, but I ended up just kind of forgetting about it or something. But it was one of these things where somebody's going to basically abandoned spaces where nature is sort of just overgrowing these old buildings and stuff. And that kind of imagery and theme is compelling to me. And so I remember going, "Oh, I should get some of those," but I ended up missing out. I could probably find it.
I saw like an awesome photo yesterday or the day before. It was just like of a building in New York City, and it had like the cafe at the bottom, and there's someone like walking with a bike next to him, a police officer walking, and then like two people sitting on the stairs up front having a coffee and a conversation. I thought it was fantastic. I just tried to find it. I typed in New York photo into Twitter. It did not come up.
Who knew?
Yeah.
I thought it was that one photo that everybody knew about from New York.
I know.
Turns out there's more. That's hilarious.
If I can find it, we'll add it to the show notes. But I really, really loved it. Yeah. All right. Am I up next? Archon says,
think so.
Now that we're a few months into the blank list meta, do you see it continuing for new projects that are minting? So blank list, you know, the white list, the allow list, the mint list, all that kind of stuff. That's really, I think, rose to prominence in September, October last year, kind of as a result of crazy gas wars and gas being really high. It was and is a good solution, I think, to projects where the hype is inordinate and the demand far outpaces supply.
It's a good solution. Can we say that?
A good
because
solution.
They could also increase the supply.
Yeah. Or the price
to meet the demand. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I think that. Yeah, I mean, I think we will see it continuing as an option for projects, and I don't really see that going away anytime soon. It works nicely for the projects to just sort of advertise and get exposure and get people interested in their project before the launch. It's like you can win something without winning something. You get access, and people are trying to get on these mint lists just because, you know, in some cases the project blows up and then it becomes worth a lot of money just immediately. So I think, for better or worse, I don't think we're going to be rid of them anytime soon. Yeah.
I pretty much agree. I don't take part in minting of new projects very often, you know? So, and as you also know, I was never particularly good at gas wars. So you would almost think I would be into the things that were meant to get around them. But by that point, I was kind of already becoming somebody who was mostly tapped out on liquidity and kind of knew the projects that I was interested in and was happy to kind of just deal with secondary stuff. I mean, at this point, and this will only continue to be more true as time goes on, there's so many projects.
Yeah.
And I don't want to discourage people from supporting new projects, but there's so much to choose from that you can spend an infinite amount of time looking into buying, trading, selling, supporting, blah, 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 projects that are already out now that you don't necessarily have to do these hoops and jump through all of that whitelist Olympic type stuff to participate in the NFT space, because there's lots of projects already out that are past that. And for the most part, that's what I've done for the last 6 months or something, you know, it is mostly not minting new stuff.
Yeah. I will say that I think if you are starting out with like a low bankroll, trying to get onto some of these, you know, pre-sale mint lists, jumping through hoops, and if you can secure a spot, it's an excellent way to like boost your early bankroll and liquidity, because Invisible Friends is a prime example. That was a 0.25 mint, and the floor was just instantly 7 to 10 ETH.
Yeah. For sure, if you have a low bankroll and you're looking to grow it, it's got to be something where, that's just a very good way to get started. And I was definitely doing the, you know, early 2021 equivalent of it, early in 2021, which is just taking part in gas wars. But by the time people were looking for solutions to the gas wars and doing these allow lists and whitelists and stuff, I kind of already had all of my effing NFTs. So. All right.
There's a second part to this question, or a separate question by Archon as well. With the Ape ecosystem, and by Ape, the Apecoin ecosystem, seemingly trending to be the umbrella for all NFTs going forward, are projects going to need to pivot and assimilate to Apecoin? It's an interesting question.
I think need is a strong word.
Yeah.
But it definitely seems like it would be a good idea for just getting attention and liquidity on your project, to have it be with this very big coin that is well distributed amongst NFT whales. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me, and then kind of goes back into that aggregation theory thing that I was talking about with Stratechery. I see a lot of parallels there, but they won't need to. That's a little bit much, it seems to me.
Yeah, I mean, they could still, if they want, release their own native token that's, you know, for their ecosystem. And there are certainly plenty of existing projects that have their own tokens that are doing well. And especially, I think if they want to include some element of governance, then it just makes sense to use your own and not Ape, obviously. But there's also ETH at the end of the day. It's just like a lot of projects, you know, if you want to release a token for your ecosystem, there should be a good reason that doing it is better than just using ETH to buy and sell things within your ecosystem. Yeah.
That makes sense to me. That ultimately you need to look at ETH as sort of a idea backstop to go, what is this coin offering to this particular NFT ecosystem that we can't just do with regular old ETH or wrapped ETH? That's always a good question to look at. And if the answer that you come up with is nothing, then maybe they're just trying to create buzz and hype and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Next question comes from Arunima. Possibly.
I would say, yeah.
It
is Penne, by the way, for Aaron.
Oh, yeah,
Penne?
You told me that.
I was on a space with him a couple of days, and anyway.
When will the original artists of art blocks go bullish? Right now it's dipping compared to its past projects. Is it safe to invest in it? Will the profile picture trend crash soon as people continue to get racked/rugged by recent projects? Also, how do you see the future of the space shaping into? And it seems like there should be another word after that maybe, but there isn't. So that's sort of a lot of questions. Let's go one at a time maybe.
When will the original artists of art blocks go bullish?
Right now it's dipping compared to its past projects. I guess they mean the new original artists, because when they say it's dipping compared to past projects, it seems like they're sort of saying that the new curated projects are not being valued the same as the old ones. But using the word original there is confusing because that makes it sound like
we can just talk about art blocks and the artists in general, I guess. I think it's sort of a case of it's difficult to group them all together. Like the original artists, the new artists, comparing it to past projects. I think we're seeing more and more as time goes on that it's no longer just art blocks or even art blocks curated as like an entire thing that moves in unison. It's, you know, certain artists will be more prolific, be more renowned, you know, more popular. They might do more work to elevate their previous bodies of work, and that might increase the value of it, where others may not. Or, you know, just it was the case for a while last year where, you know, everyone is going crazy for art blocks that people would just jump in and say, hey, what's the cheapest art blocks curated and buy it and mint it and the floor would go up. Or what's, you know,
and
what's
Factory
in my range.
And Playground, all of it.
All over.
It was definitely getting treated sort of like just fungible tokens, really. And that's ultimately not what it's supposed to be. And eventually, you know, still the NFT space in Ethereum is only so big. And when all of that was happening in art blocks, which I guess would have been like August-ish of last year, it basically reached peak saturation, and then there was nobody new to come in and keep the floors raising, and you just had a massive undercutting thing that is kind of still going on now, but at a way slowed pace, because ultimately now the only people left still holding it are the people that don't want to sell at these prices, financially speaking, or literally are just owning it for the art, which is sort of the ultimate intended use case of art blocks. I think that what we've been able to see is that NFT, you're just laughing at yourself, shopping for a second. People have become aware of and interested in art through art blocks and through NFTs, and that has given them sort of the value that they have now. And in order for that value to go up, those people need to get even more into it, which I think is somewhat hard, or you need to get more of the people in NFTs that kind of got burnt by just treating art blocks like fungible coins last year to get back into it. Or lastly, basically get the art community in general to appreciate generative art and appreciate that NFTs are a good way to have ownership of generative art. And it seems like art blocks itself, that's their current mission right now, is sort of to go out to the traditional art world and proselytize the value of the artistic value, I should say, of generative art, and say, hey, we're a platform that's doing it. Here's our stuff. And here's why generative art is like a fascinating, exciting, new, in quotes, form of art.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. And I think, I mean, yeah, so the next part of the question is it safe to invest in it? It's like, you know, we don't give investment advice on this podcast. And even if we did,
I think art is something that is historically not at all easy to invest in. But I do think a lot of that has to do with the things that NFTs sort of abstract away. You had to worry if you were actually getting what you thought you were getting when you bought art before. You don't have that. Again, you don't have that concern here with the way provenance works in NFTs. So that's helpful. And the fees and ease of the marketplace is so much different. You used to have to pay 10, 15, 25% or whatever to go, you know, buyer to seller or whatever, going through galleries and or auction houses and stuff like that. So I will say again that I think investing in art is, to say that that's safe would be nonsense. You know, it's not necessarily easy or safe. People do it, and some do it successfully. And I believe that NFTs make it more accessible and have the relationships be a bit more direct and a bit more fair without having these big entities that are sort of able to control supply and control demand and extract a lot out of every single transaction. With them gone, I feel like that really will help the ecosystem and will help people that want to create art, make art, buy art, sell art. All of that, I think, will be there will be a boon to all of those participants in the NFT space, as opposed to the traditional art space. But to say that it's safe to invest in, no, like treasury bonds are sort of safe to invest in, right?
Yeah.
Not art.
Yeah. Will the PFP trend crash soon as people continue to get racked/rugged by recent projects? Maybe.
I have been saying for a while that I thought there's too much of it at too high of a value. I've been mostly proven not correct, but intermittently, certainly there's been big downturns. But I'll say, with respect to like people continuously getting rugged or whatever, I think you only need like one missed Azuki, for instance, to make up for 25, 50 projects that do poorly to keep people coming back to the minting game, basically, and go, I don't want to miss the next Invisible Friends. I don't want to miss the next Azuki. I don't want to miss the next Clone X. Like there's so many huge success stories. Never mind like Apes, obviously,
right.
Where the fact that some people are going to lose in a lot of these other projects is not enough of a deterrent when the success is so big, when you're able to successfully get in on one of the successful profile picture projects. I think ultimately the issue has to just be like people get bored of it or realize that there's too much supply or something like that. But I don't think the individual nasty projects, now again, assuming we can continue to have, let's say, once every 6 weeks, a project comes out that really gets to a 5+ F floor that people get excited about and seems like it will sustain. As long as that keeps happening, people are going to keep showing up.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, we've spoken about how we thought, the PFP trend was oversaturated and would crash in like June last year. Just like there were too many projects. There were 3 projects launching 10K collections a week. That's ludicrous. It's ridiculous. And then, I mean, the market is growing at a rapid pace. So while it's not growing at a pace that can support, 100 10K projects every week with a significant floor, it can probably support 5 projects a week with a 1 ETH floor or a 0.5 ETH floor. And again, people will, to a lesser extent than, say, looking at missing out on Azuki, they will say, well, I minted this for 0.05 and it went to 0. Damn, I should have minted this other thing that went to 5 or like 0.5. And yeah, there are still a lot of opportunities out there. It's just, it's getting...
You can't buy and flip successfully every single project like it felt like you could for a little while.
Right.
But I feel like that's been... I mean, since even like October, you haven't been able to do that anymore. It feels like you have to be a bit more either lucky or selective or some combination of both at this point, and have for a while now.
Last question from Arunima. Also, how do you see the future of the space shaping into?
That's a broad question.
It is.
The space, they're talking a lot specifically about, it seems like, the difference between pure art NFTs and profile picture projects. So do you think they're asking sort of specifically about that split or more general?
Yeah, maybe like, do we see a rotation back into where people are more excited and the tension is more on generative art, one-of-one art, and less on PFPs, maybe?
Yeah, so I think that's such an interesting question. And it seems like, when I talk about the profile picture project stuff, I tend to talk about how I think it's not like anything else. And the community aspect of it is so powerful that it's very hard for the other stuff to compete. But I feel like on sort of the other hand, at this point, the market has sort of said that with the pricing of them. And so if the market is kind of already correctly doing that, if that kind of trend continues, at some point the ratio might be off and you could see the art market going up. Another thing that I've also thought and talked about is that, in theory, to me, it seems like every person in the NFT space, say you're just fully in the metaverse, right? I think for the most part, you only need one profile picture project NFT, and that becomes sort of your metaverse identity, for lack of a better word. And then as far as your other NFTs, you can have a lot of art NFTs, because those are your things, but you only need one NFT that is you. And so that kind of thing makes me sort of vaguely bullish on the concept of just us in the NFT space getting more into collecting art NFTs, and giving them real value relative to just more profile picture projects that ultimately I think people are hoarding to hopefully sell later for a higher price to some new entrants, or to people who decide that they're bullish on the same profile picture project as you, but just 3 weeks later. That kind of thing, it just seems like, again, the rate of the new demand is not going to be able to keep up with the amount of supply we already have sitting waiting, never mind the constant new supply of it. Whereas, again, the art stuff, where to me it makes sense for people to hold a bunch of it for their own purposes of just, these are my things, this is the art I like, this is what I appreciate, that kind of thing. You know, the supply versus how many participants there are in the space, that's much more of a sort of healthy thing that I feel like could turn bullish. But it does seem like there's so much hopium on Twitter, like one season's coming, all of that stuff, and it never really seems to materialize, because it's not as sort of compelling and sort of self-reinforcing of a market as these community projects are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it also seems like people, the longer that someone is in the space, the more likely they are, to my mind, to like gravitate towards art, and whether it's generative one-on-one art, photography. It's sort of, I think the PFP projects attract people a lot to begin with, especially because it's sort of seen as a very lucrative way to flip. There are a lot of success stories and stuff like that, whereas with art, it's harder to know what to buy. It's a lot of it's a lot longer term, in terms of like, if there is going to be some value increase, it's unlikely to expect, or like most people don't expect it to go up in like 5x overnight, and in the way that a lot of people do with PFP projects. But I noticed that like when people do make a bunch of, if people do make a bunch of money flipping NFTs or JPEGs, sure, they'll withdraw some of it to fiat, they'll do all that, but it's sort of then like, well, either they want to like look at a blue chip PFP project, or they start looking at, oh, I've always wanted a Fidenza, I've always wanted something from Artblocks, I've always wanted an X copy.
And again, just to sort of tie that idea back into the identity thing, I think a lot of that, what happens sort of is that people are sort of aspirational to the one profile picture community that they really think is the coolest or has the best art or whatever. And so once you acquire that, you can kind of not have to worry about that space as much, unless, again, you're just using it as a thing to try and dump on other people. Whereas, again, you can go, I've always really wanted a Fidenza, and you get that, but once you get that, that doesn't stop you necessarily from wanting a Where My Vans Go, and that doesn't necessarily stop you from wanting an X copy, in the same way that once you've got that Azuki that you really like, you don't necessarily need the cool cat, because the Azuki's already in my profile picture. The cool cat then would, for the most part, it feels like to me, is something that is just, I want to sell this later to somebody else, and preferably not that much later. Whereas all the other stuff just seems more like an organic actual collection that you're just building. And there is an understanding that I think, when you are buying that stuff, if you are buying it with some sort of an investing mindset, it has to be a lot longer than this very fast-paced sort of flipping profile picture project stuff that we've seen be kind of very successful for a long time now.
Yeah. All right. I think we answered all those questions. Next up, we have Ark. Who is most hurt when an NFT is stolen and frozen on OpenSea? The person who lost their NFT, whose account was hacked, scammed, or the person who unknowingly bought a stolen NFT and is now unable to transfer or sell it?
Wow. Well, I feel like I talk too much on these, so why don't you handle this? Because I think we're going to say the same thing.
Yeah, maybe. Probably. Who is most hurt when an NFT is stolen? I would say the person who lost their NFT is most hurt in the grand scheme of things, because they have nothing. Like they got hacked or scammed, and then they didn't get anything for it, and they lost their NFT. When someone buys a stolen NFT, sure, they pay whatever, 15 ETH for an Azuki. They get the Azuki, it gets flagged as stolen, and then they can't transfer or sell it on OpenSea. Jamie is like nodding ferociously and pointing at me, agreeing. But yes, okay, they're out the ETH, but they still have the NFT. You can use a different marketplace to trade it. You can do something else with it. You can still use it as your profile picture if you want. You can still be part of the community if you want. It's not like it's tainted forever per se. You can come to some agreement with the original owner of it who got hacked and scammed, and maybe sell it back to them for what you paid. There's a lot of avenues for recourse.
You can put in a support ticket with OpenSea. That seems like it's sort of a headache and doesn't go quickly or well all that often, but it's some level of recourse. But yeah, I want to really reiterate the thing that it seems like a lot of people still think that OpenSea has much more control over their NFTs than they really do. It is the dominant marketplace, and if you can't sell your NFT on that marketplace, it definitely makes it harder to get the value for that NFT, for sure. But they cannot they can't take the NFT from you, and they can't stop you from doing stuff with the NFT except on their own platform. So you can still sell it on other platforms. You can still lend it out on other platforms. You can still fractionalize it on other platforms. All of that stuff you still have access to. So I really want to reiterate that. I feel like once a week at least I'm having to clarify this for people on Twitter, because they think that it's the end of the NFT's existence or use cases or value or all of that if OpenSea flags it, which is just not the case.
No. All right. I think, do you have anything else to add?
On that particular question?
On that one, yeah.
No. I agree with what you said about who has it the worst, and I'm glad you clarified the thing and all of that.
So another question from Ark. If you could buy, it seems like somewhat related. If you could buy NFT insurance, so monthly payment that covers you against NFT theft or loss, you don't get the NFT back, but you get ETH to the value of the floor price at the time. Would you? ... How would we stop bad actors from abusing this?
Okay. I'll say that I guess I would have to see how much it costs for this, right?
Right.
How much losses are they willing to cover, and for what price would be? I would absolutely need those two before I can even venture to say if I would use it. But certainly, if they were going to charge me 1 penny per year and they would fully support the value of my entire NFT portfolio, yes, of course I would do it. And then to the second part, they say, how would we stop bad actors from abusing that? That would be up to the insurance provider. That's not my responsibility, right? Whoever's providing this service would have to have some sort of way that they're sleuthing the blockchain and finding out if this is sort of a valid theft or somebody making it look like a theft to try and commit insurance fraud. I mean, the legal
similar to the real world. It's just like, if
insurance fraud is against the law, that's sort of the backstop, is that people can possibly figure out that you're full of shit, and then you can face consequences for it. That is how theoretically you'd police it. Yeah,
and theoretically, again, all of this stuff is public on the blockchain, so it should be, if they trace it back to a Coinbase account, theoretically they could get in touch with Coinbase and once law enforcement gets involved, maybe find out who owned that account, and then if it turns out it's you, then you're in big trouble, and stuff like that. And
speaking of law enforcement getting involved, did you want to talk about the Frosties thing? That's kind of interesting.
Sure, let's touch on that. So if I'm getting it correct, the Department of Justice
the United States Department of Justice
charged 2 individuals with money laundering, fraud, and I think they even used the word rug.
They used the word rugging, which is funny, or pulled the rug, they might have said. in the like official legal complaint. But yeah, we've
the
got
Frosties NFT collection,
which I'm not familiar with it. Yeah. But anyway, they basically, were one of these projects that said, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And then after it minted out, they basically deleted the Discord and the Twitter and withdrew the money and didn't do anything. And now they're getting charged with a actual crime, which is kind of gnarly and is probably making a lot of other people sweat right now, because there's certainly been a lot of projects that have done that basic exact thing.
Yeah. I think it's great. Honestly, like it's going to bring some negative press and FUD to the whole space. Probably like they'll be like, haha, see, there was money laundering in NFTs all along. We were right. That
FUD and stuff and bad press was already there. Yeah. And now it's just the bad actors are actually going to face consequences for it. Because here's another thing we'll say is that the community itself hasn't been great, I would say, at policing bad actors. We have some people trying, and there's definitely some stuff, but we definitely have a handful of knowingly bad actors that people are still somewhat supportive of. And then there's, all the anonymous ones we don't know about and the gray areas, which is sort of a different story. But we have not been great, certainly, as just a community at making people face negative consequences for behaving poorly.
Yeah. And hopefully, this acts as a deterrent for some people who may be looking to rug pull and scam people in the future. I really hope that the person who rug pulled the Untamed Elephants project, I really don't like that person. They're prolific in scamming and rug pulling. And, hopefully
I vaguely remember when that rug happened, but I didn't know that they were necessarily involved in other ones. Before
and they're
or
like
after.
Proud, like bragging about it on Twitter and stuff like that.
People suck. Some people suck sometimes. Let's say that. I don't want to be a negative Nancy. Do you want to play What Am I Thinking?
Oh,
and end it with a fun game of What Am I Thinking? All right, let's go.
Let's do that.
Let's give it a thought here. What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? I got one.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Snow.
Broomstick.
Snow and broomstick. Snow and broomstick. I got one.
Sure.
3, 2, 1. Shovel. Magic. See, I thought a little bit about like a Harry Potter type thing, but I figure shoveling is so similar to sweeping, and it's what you do with snow. But I guess you'd never really shoveled snow, so it's not a reference for you.
I think I did it once at your place. We would just...
I think I remember that a little bit. I guess it's more of a thing for me. Okay, so we got magic and shovel.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I got something, but I don't think it's going to work. 3, 2, 1. Home Alone. Home Alone and wand. Home Alone.
How did you get Home Alone from magic and shovel out of curiosity?
There's the creepy guy with the shovel and he whacks him, but then also the equivalent character. This is sort of convoluted, but the equivalent character in the next movie is the pigeon lady, and her connection with the pigeon seems to be a bit magical.
Oh my God. How did I not get this?
Yeah, no, I told you it was not a good one.
So we have Home Alone and wand.
Home Alone and wand. Okay. I got one.
Sure.
3, 2, 1. Movie. Movie and wizard. I think we got
something.
I'll just do it. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Harry Potter. I was gonna say Lord of the Rings on purpose to fuck it up because I knew you'd say Harry Potter, but that would. We don't have time for that. We're very busy people, and we need to say the same word at the same time and get on with our lives. This is for the most part been episode 36, right? Do we got anything we want to say? Oh, wow, nice. Is that custom?
It's a what was that?
Is that custom? Like you didn't just buy that off Amazon?
So someone from the Zenacademy community, they work in the production area and they have contacts in the 3D printing world and just drew this up and had it printed as a prototype, and They had a bunch
Very
of
cool.
like 4 of them made and said, "Would you like me to send?" And like, this is heavy as well. It's like,
Yeah.
it's a solid base, and I got 2 of them, and now we have a crystal ball, and we're looking at getting yeah.
And that's cool. There's no level of translucence to it, like you can't at all see through it, right?
No, it's very like it's you can see yourself in it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I got this guy.
Oh
like-
yeah.
Yeah.
I got a bunch of tweet notifications related to that thing. They're doing some sort of project. I couldn't keep
Oh,
up
the
with
big
that.
one. Yeah, this is from the Golems founder. Like this, it's like 16-year-old
okay.
kid, I think, made this. The big one is it's this. Anyway.
What do we have to say? Like, do the things, right? Subscribe to the podcast. Tell friends.
Tell friends.
Donate blood. That's a nice thing to do.
Donate blood. Watch us on YouTube.
Don't litter. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you doing littering? the end.
This has been
episode 36 of two bored apes talking NFT.
Oh, we have the airdrop coming out. It'll be out by the time you hear this, for a pretty cool NFT that I'll be dropping to everyone on Polygon. Well, everyone who submitted their addresses.
Yeah, not every single Polygon address is going to get one.
Yeah, that would cost a lot, even on Polygon.
Polygon's been rough lately. We're getting we're trying to end the episode. We don't need to talk about the Polygon network being down sometimes.
Yeah, but let me just say, we have extras, so if you missed out, don't worry, you can still get one. Just reach out.
And we'll have the information to do that in the show notes, probably, right?
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah.
Somehow, some way, you'll figure it out, because our listeners are so smart. We have the smartest listeners in the world.
We really do.
And the nicest and the most attractive. They're all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for listening. Tune in next week, etc. Bye.
Two bored apes talking NFTs, DeFi, and some random stuff. Two bored apes talking NFTs, DeFi, and some random